I was a little girl, my most cherished possession was my library card. I would take my library card, walk 2 blocks up the street, 2 long blocks, to the library, and read everything I could. When I got older, there was a shelf called Great Books. I didn't know what they were, who the authors were, but I read anything on that shelf because it was a great book. So literature to me was the doorway into another world. And I thought the best thing in the world was to be a writer, and a writer of fiction, because fiction is what I read. But I never could find my voice, actually. You have to have a voice in which you're comfortable speaking in a certain genre, and I couldn't find that voice. But anyway, I went on with literature, mostly as a reader, and sometimes I would try writing. Then in 1970, I learned the TM technique, Transcendental Meditation Technique, and that changed quite a lot. And by 1974, I had become a teacher of the Transcendental Meditation Technique and a member of the literature faculty at Maharishi University of Management, then called Maharishi International University. And there, I was exposed to Maharishi's ideas on literature, and his ideas on what the purpose and goal of literature were and how literature worked on consciousness. Wonderful ideas, brilliant ideas, which I then collected, eventually published as a book, collected talks on literature and language with my colleague Susan Anderson, because I thought the rest of the world should have access to those ideas as well. And when Maharishi heard that I was working on my dissertation to get a PhD in literature, he sent me a few points that I might think about. He said, the purpose of literature is to enhance life, to allow it to flow in bliss. He said, every expression of speech and writing is the flow of consciousness and coherence of its author. He said, speech should be such as to awaken the inner life of the individual, to bring the listener or reader into harmony with all the laws of nature and all the laws of one's own nature too. And so he said it's the role of literature then to create models and examples of the kind of writing that will produce this effect. And he said that literature records the flow of consciousness, not only on the level of superficial reality, but on the level of the infinite correlation of consciousness. And he says, therefore, the purpose of speech, the purpose of writing, is to inspire thought, inspire feeling, and inspire action. And the purpose of action is to end action in its goal, fulfillment. So one day in the winter, December of 1994, I held the pen in my hand and put pen to paper, and the pen wrote poetry. I had found my voice. Oh my God. And she was a poet. No one was more shocked than I. So okay, something happens, you go with it, right? So this is the very first poem that I wrote in December 1994. My husband and I had built a little beach house in Florida, and we went there for the very first time that spring to outfit it and get it ready to live in. We didn't have any furniture. So our very first morning in the house, we had to have breakfast on the front steps. So we made our bowl of granola, and we sat on the front steps because there were no chairs, and we had our first breakfast in our new house. And then when I started writing that winter, that moment, which was so charged with happiness, came into my mind and came running out my pen. And here it is. It's called Breakfast in Seagrove. We sit on our deck in Seagrove Beach and eat breakfast with the rising sun. The warm spring light shines on our granola and charms us out of our robes and slippers. We feast on the blue sky, long needles of the slash pine, taste the salty air, hear the hum of the rumbling surf. We savor the glow on each other's faces, radiant from meditation and lit by love. Happiness alone stops time and makes him pause. He smiles at our joy and forgets to tilt the hourglass and hurry the rushing sands. He marks the moment with streamers of taste and touch. We are awake to the present and awake to each other. Only timelessness can stop time, halt the tumbling seas, and give the flavor of eternity to a morning meal. We breakfast in the hands of God and live forever. The next poem is called This Body, and it was actually published in Lyrical Iowa. I had the idea to send away my poem to Lyrical Iowa's call for poetry, and it was published, as was another one that I wrote. So perhaps a little unusual, but it was one of my early poems. This Body. I pour a puddle of brown color over my head, hoping to cheat time's blighting touch. I leave a little gray around my face for a natural look and a gentler frame for old skin, new wrinkles. This body has served me well during this lifetime, carrying me through childhood, school days, and marriage, when husband and children thought it a softer version of their own, poking and prodding it to serve their pleasure. And I lent this body willingly, pleasuring myself in their desires, giving and taking love through all the senses, sharing the physical play of eyes, ears, muscles, and voice, and the salty fun of wrestling and lovemaking. And now this, sitting me down in silent splendor and drawing me inward toward a place where I can be unbodied and free, becoming a fountain of liquid bliss, splashing up and surging through all my limbs and pouring out over all the wintry world. Well, it turns out you can tell a story with a poem, and this one tells a story. And this happened when we were living in Switzerland with our children and working for the international TM movement, very busy, and my mother came to visit. My mother, this is dedicated to my mother. Sweet mystery. Oh, I sighed, complaining to my husband. She manages to visit at the busiest of times. Let her be with your grandkids, he counseled, and set up lunch with all your friends at work. She'll be pleased, he added, neatly eliminating himself. Tell me, she queried, as we lingered at the table, my mostly single friends and my widowed mom, what do you girls think of love and marriage? They looked at each other and reddened. Then each one confessed a desire to fall in love and marry someday soon. What do you think with all your knowledge, one asked. She smiled from somewhere deep inside her memories and whispered, ah, sweet mystery. Then her eyes looked through us to a meadow in western Russia that bloomed with flowers some 60 years before. I was 10 or 11, I think, when an older girl took me with her into the fields around our village. She was tall and very pretty and somewhat nervous, although I didn't mark it at the time. So flattered was I by her attentions, so proud that she had chosen me. A young man appeared suddenly and took her hands and bent to kiss her on the mouth and drew her close. She flushed and quivered in his arms, but did not try to leave. Startled by the gestures and emotion, I gasped aloud and poised myself to leave and run back home. He saw me then and tried to send me off with an irritated gesture and angry words. She turned around his chest and caught my eye and silently pleaded with me not to go, desperate to have me there, yet not too close. I drew away a little and tried not to watch as they murmured to each other and pressed together. His hands dropped to her hips and she rose against him, and I heard his rough breathing as they kissed and felt his hot breath in my heart and soul. The tall grasses waved around my ears. A sluing sound came through the trees, or from their sighs, or from my own, perhaps. The air was thick with pollen and with the urgency to create new life out of winter's near retreat. He walked back in silence. She blushed and asked me not to tell and thanked me with a hug for staying by her side till she could have her time in those green and blooming meadows. Angry, excited, it moved beyond mere words, I promised. The mystery of it all, the power and the glory, had me in their grip, though I didn't understand what happens between a woman and a man, and why she wanted me along, and how I knew to stay. She paused and looked upon the group and smiled. It's my turn now to let my eyes unfocus, to peer through memories and dreams, and see my mother as a person, a child, an old soul, who stood once in a Russian meadow and looked at love and saw his power through young and innocent eyes. After we moved to Florida, I experienced at one time a period of what's called spiritual dryness, or accidia it's called in the spiritual text, spiritual dryness. And then one day I was down at the beach with my husband, who paints watercolors, and suddenly a poem just had to come out. So I got a little pencil from him and found a little piece of paper, and here it is. It's called A Scent of Gladness. A scent of gladness fills the air, somewhat fishy, salty, shot through with the cries of children in the shallows. Worn-out pencil, coaxed to a point by a persistent thumbnail. A scrap of paper, ample enough to bear a few scratches, bliss after a dry day. A small dachshund, wet and sandy, happily trotting between his children, ripened traces of sea debris, and the painter at my side, who gently discourages his new friend in favor of clean paper and flowing color. The lake is full from yesterday's rain and spills over into the surf, rippling back and forth in its channel with each foamy rush. A few fall visitors search for shells. My own stagnant waters, suddenly freed, greatly move in a slow ebb and flow upon the afternoon tide. The next is called Desert Sunset. We were flying out to see our daughter, who lives in the Lake Tahoe area. And when you fly west, you fly into a sunset that goes on and on and on, because it's getting earlier and earlier, so the sun isn't setting yet. So a desert sunset flying out in a westerly direction can be quite amazing. And this is the poem, Desert Sunset. Sitting on the ground in Phoenix, waiting for passengers to deplane, we watch the desert sunset on the hills. The ground still wet from a recent storm. Red sky, changing colors, eternal display, there for anyone to see or not see, behind the hangars and the aircraft just ahead. Above the clouds once more, we navigate among the thunderheads, reaching hundreds of feet above and below us, etched golden and radiant with the sun's last rays. Vishwakarman, architect of the universe, creating his canvas for beauty's sake alone, heedless of the eyes of a modern traveler. Flying northwest to Reno as the evening darkens, into a horizon endlessly red and orange, I watch the bones of the Sierra Madres stretched beneath us on the desert floor like an ancient dragon, its ridges poking through dried lizard skin, horny and sharp in the deep shadows. Tired and dry from a long day of travel, I gape at the beauty so generously given, so lavishly displayed, indifferent to the eyes accidentally there. This is a poem. This is a poem about the many changes that we go through in life, and some of them are so big that we think this could be a whole new life, that the past life was a really past life, that I reincarnated into this new life, the size sometimes of the changes. And sometimes they go smoothly, and sometimes they're challenging. Anyway, I put a little head note on this poem, which is called Dream Fingers. And it comes from the Bhagavad Gita, the translation by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, Book 2, verse 22. As a man casting off worn-out garments takes other new ones, so the dweller in the body, casting off worn-out bodies, takes others that are new. Restless in my bed and nostalgic for a simpler time, I visit a summer evening in my mind. Come, I nudge my husband and the cat. Let's take a walk down to the ponds, now drained and filled. We go out the kitchen door, across the dark garden, and through the back gate. We walk along the sidewalk past sleeping buildings and overgrown Iowa fields. Catherine smells a rabbit and bounces off into the brush. Never mind, we'll meet up with her on our return. I hold my husband's warm hand and breathe in the summer night, watch the water spill over the rocks, nod to a passing student, and then we head back, pausing to pick a few mulberries on the way, heedless there will ever be another place, another time in which to make a life. Images and sensations of the summer night mingle indistinctly in my mind as I disappear into sleep. Dream fingers search through a closet in El Paso, emptied long ago, for a tiny lilac dress with matching lace-trimmed shoes for my baby's baby. The house long sold, that life abandoned for another, in a different time and place. The giver of the dress, moved by love for her first, though not yet seen, granddaughter, now dead. Does a snake pause, coming across an old skin that no longer fits, yet once held all he was? Does he yearn for earlier times, or slide heedlessly into the future, parting the tall grasses without looking back? This last poem that I'm going to read is called When We Are Insubstantial. When we are insubstantial. Okay. When we are insubstantial between this life and the next, I may regret the times we lay together. I'm going to start over. Okay. This next poem is set in that little rest period that you take after meditating, or after doing that longer TM and TM City program. You lie down, you rest for a few minutes. And this was, that rest period inspired this poem, which is called When We Are Insubstantial. When we are insubstantial between this life and the next, I may regret the times we lay together, and I did not reach for your arm, warm and solid beneath the flannel, and draw you to my breast. I may regret getting up to do whatever I thought I had to do, and not lay there, drawing in the night air and the scent of Carolina jasmine. I may regret that I hurried through my days and did not linger on the porch, soaking up the sunshine and the bird song and the aroma of sun-warmed pines. It is easy to forget in the pressure of daily life that our precious time on this green planet is limited, that our contract here is fixed. We came together to grow, to give, to pay some old debts, to leave the world a better place before we go. It's easy to forget we came to live. And the last one is inspired by looking through an album and seeing pictures of friends who had died, family who had died, and realizing they were still very much, kind of like a Harry Potter painting, very much alive to me still. And I wrote this poem. It's called When You Are Young. When you are young, everyone you know is alive. When you are older, many you really know and care for have died. When you are young, everyone you know is alive and present, in and out of the house, on the phone, in your thoughts, in your heart. The first death comes hard. The lifeless corpse under the makeup, the life breath gone, spirit fled hastily as from a burning building, leaving nothing behind except an eternal presence in your thoughts, in your heart, in your dreams. After his sudden death, my father met me in a dream. He sat on a park bench and I loved him. He didn't speak. I tried to tell him something important, but I couldn't remember what it was. I want to call my mother and tell her my news, share the worries and the joys, but there's no phone that can connect with her now. In albums, the photographs of dear friends look out, full of life and ambition, unaware their time will soon be cut short. Faces of grandchildren growing up far away tease and stir the heart. When you are young, everyone you know is alive and present. When you are older, everyone you know is present somewhere. Now my plan, I'm creating a website in which I'll have some of this poetry, my travel writing, my memoirs, my academic writing, other links to other things. It'll be called RhodaTheWriter.com. Don't look for it yet, but it should be up in the fall of 2013. And in there I hope to post a few things from time to time. Thank you.